This project was announced in the UK to dim the sun. From a scientific point of view, I looked at that, and from what we know about big systems on the skin microbiome or everywhere in the world, we just immediately thought disaster. Playing God and interfering with one small part of a system could actually lead to
Sam and Kit Wallen-Russell, who really took skincare into their own hands.
Twin brothers from the UK who are taking the skincare industry by storm.
Sam is a nuclear astrophysicist, and Kit is a geophysicist and author.
A Notre Dame grad and his twin brother are looking to revolutionize skin health.
The two launched a 2-year intensive research study.
Two very smart guys who knew all about bad skin at a very early age.
That woman at the end was our mum, and really she's the face which launched 1,000 questions for us.
Anyway, this works perfectly because we've gone from Kanye West to Chris Eubanks Sr. to Kit and Sam Wallen-Russell, all mavericks of their own industries.
Yeah, exactly,
That's how I would call it. So, welcome along, boys. That's a pretty good intro to be labelled up there with Kanye and the Eubanks, Mr. Eubanks. Sorry, that's pretty good.
But I'll take Eubanks. I'll stay away from the Kanye one.
Okay, how about Kanye, the old Kanye, back in the day? How about that? Even in though?
Maybe.
When he was good. When he was good.
Adam, that's very nice.
That's all right.
In terms of music artistry, you're right. No, he's really talented. I don't think he's ever been that nice a person. No.
Who? Kanye?
Yeah, I think he's always been a bit odd, hasn't he?
He has, and he's just been on this. He's just been on this spiral. Let's call it. It's just gradual, and now it's just building up and building up. It feels like. Talking of downward spirals, there's been some news recently, hasn't there, Kit, in the UK around global warming and what can be done. Do you want to give us a bit of an insight into what's been happening in the UK? Considering I'm so far away and I don't hear anything anymore about the UK.
True, yeah. They should actually do it in Australia. But anyway, yeah, a couple of weeks ago, I don't know if it was the go-ahead, but basically this project was announced in the UK to dim the sun. So it involved doing things like putting particles up into clouds and making cloud particles more reflective to try and dim the sun's effect on runaway global warming, as they call it, or runaway climate change. It caught my eye because there's loads of these science projects which I looked at that and I immediately, Sam and I know you thought the same thing, but I thought disaster straight away.
So what do you do?
What do you mean, what do I do? Oh yeah, sorry, we signed a petition. We went online, Keyboard Warriors, and we signed a petition because I knew straight away.
Keyboard Warriors don't do anything.
I know, I'm only joking, yeah, I'm just saying.
How many people have signed the petition?
That's a good point.
I think it's on around 50,000 at the moment, I think.
Not bad.
Because people in the UK are pretty sick of the ruling elite's agenda on things like net zero and the climate and stuff like that, which makes their lives worse. A lot of the ordinary working people anyway. So yeah, we won't get into that politics, but
that's all right.
Yeah, but basically from a scientific point of view, I looked at that, and from what we know about big systems on the skin microbiome or everywhere in the world, we just immediately thought disaster.
Why?
It's a good question. Well, basically, very simply, and you can go more into it because you're the physicist, can't you?
Yeah.
Later on. We'll go more into it later on. But very simply, playing God and interfering with one small part of a system, thinking that's the only thing which will change the outcome of the whole system, is a really bad idea. It could actually lead to catastrophic effects for the whole system. So in actual fact, it could actually make the problem you're trying to solve a lot worse because you have no idea that one little change, what it will amount to and how it will affect the overall system, because it's a system of millions of parts. So how do we know that changing that one tiny small part is going to have the desired effect? No one does, and they don't know that.
Is this the first of its kind?
Yeah.
Has this been never done before?
good question. I don't actually know.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
I don't
about
think
that.
it has been done, but I can't.
I remember
say.
for when the World Cup. When was the World Cup in Qatar, Adam?
Oh, did they do that? They try and cool it
22?
down.
No, not 22.
It
2020?
was definitely recently. Yeah,
Might have been the COVID year.
No, wait, no. 26 is going to be. It's 22, I reckon, was Qatar.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
yeah, 2022. Yeah, you're right.
It was
Yeah,
2022, and then they moved it to the winter, right?
yeah. So
Or did they?
I think in the end they moved it to the winter or something like that. But one idea was because Qatar's so hot in the summer, unlike the UK, which is why it's crazy in the UK. But one idea was at one stage they had was putting up fake clouds to deflect the sun.
Did they actually do it?
No, I don't think they did it. No, but yeah, again, an idea which could just be crazy as well. But they changed it to the winter in the end, didn't they? I think.
Yeah, they moved it.
But even in the winter, it's hot. So.
Yeah.
Kit,
Yeah.
Here's one for you.
Yeah.
I've got a question for you now, because you talked about playing God. I wouldn't necessarily say this was a situation. Well, it kind of was in a way, but I loved. I watched the Chernobyl documentary series like 2-3 years ago.
Oh yeah.
Really like intense, like interesting story, right? But in a way, as much as they didn't obviously mean to do that, that was in a way like almost like an act of playing God in a way, right? Where the amount of radiation that was released into the atmosphere and everything is just ridiculous, right? I think at the time, I think it still plagues the world today to some extent. Obviously, it's died off or whatever, but yeah, I wonder if, and I guess with all these events, you never know what the other scenario would have been if it didn't happen, right? Like where everything would have ended up, but yeah, I don't know. You mentioned it was just that's like for me that's a major like event where we probably really should have like really messed with up the planet there, but I don't know. Is that a fair thing to add in there or not? Or do you think?
Oh no, definitely.
Yeah, I mean,
I agree
that was
with
accidental, and then but also in the short term, it was hugely damaging. Like the area now is still a no-go area, but then obviously you don't know the implications for the whole planet. But what was Adam? So that's more obvious. Sorry. That's more obviously a bad thing, isn't it? Like terrible radiation into the planet, not a good thing.
Yeah, but
whereas it's other things that aren't on the face of it bad, like put some particles up in the air that on the face of it aren't bad in the short term or the short area, the small area, but you don't know what the effects they could have down the line. So that's
just one thing which may not be slightly related, but I think during the Russian invasion of Ukraine, they had such outdated maps and they were using like 1970s maps that the Russian forces went into places like Chernobyl because their maps didn't have any of the hazard warnings on them. Yeah, that was a story which I heard because the Russians were so stupid. Anyway, I'm not sure how that helps our point.
We need to incorporate a bit of QI, the TV show, into this to see.
Yeah.
I like that.
Anyway, I took you off topic there, but so very interesting, right? What everyone's what's happening in the UK. How does that relate to what we all talk about kit on a weekly basis with humans in the skin microbiome? What's your learnings from that, and how we can apply it?
Well, it relates. The weird thing is, on the face of it, it looks like it's totally unrelated to the skin microbiome. But our research into physics and the skin microbiome showed us instantly the way we think about it. We knew instantly that news story that is going to be a disaster or could be a disaster. So, Sam, you can talk about more of this. But basically, in big systems like the skin microbiome, like the climate, there's millions of parts involved in it. There's millions of variables. So if you try and change one small part, we've seen many examples on the skin where it's had really negative effects and has ruined things. So, for example, a good example of it, Adam, sweet. Adam, do you remember the wolves in Yellowstone Park? Do you remember that story? Yeah.
Yep.
So it shows you that it can go both ways. But basically, the wolves died out. I can't remember why in Yellowstone Park. And then the whole park, because that one species died out, the whole park went into a state of huge disrepair for years. So much so that it became I think they quoted it as saying, the worst overgrazed communities in the whole of the Western world. So this really lush, incredible, biodiverse ecosystem was ruined just by taking out one species, which was the wolves. And again, that wasn't done by human intervention, I don't think. I think the wolves just died out. Maybe pushed by humans a little bit. But again, point still stands. If you play God with one small part, that could have catastrophic effects to the whole system. And I always use that example, Adam. I know you're going to ask, how does that relate to the skin? But I use that example when we talk about the skin microbiome and, for example, using probiotics for the skin microbiome. So probiotics is like adding a species to the skin, playing God, one tiny part, instead of making sure the whole system is healthy.
Yeah,
so what we want to do...
The wolves is really good.
Yeah, the wolves is a good one. It's a good analogy.
Because what happens when they reintroduce the wolves?
Yeah, so when they reintroduce the wolves, and again, the important point here is, I won't go too much into it, but they knew the exact amount of wolves which were healthy in the park. So when they reintroduced the wolves in numbers they knew were healthy for the park, again, the park's health was transformed. So that's the positive, but it was only positive because they knew that one component in those exact numbers were healthy for the park.
Because of what it was before.
Yeah, but if you don't know, if you're trying to, well, for example, let's just imagine that global warming is happening and it's due to humans. Okay, that's another discussion for the future. If you don't know whether changing the clouds to make them more reflective is going to have the desired effect, then you shouldn't do it at all. And again, it's a huge system. So as we talked about last time, Adam, what could happen is it could actually make the problem you're talking about worse if you don't want any more global warming to happen. So, for example, if the clouds become more reflective and the globe does cool down for a bit, just imagine that happens, then you're going to get more ice caps in the poles. So then just one thing which could actually make it warmer after that is that if you've got more ice in the poles, you're not going to have as much water in the water system. So you're actually going to get fewer clouds. So it's going to be less reflective, and then it's going to heat up more. So again, there's things like this which people don't even think about.
That's just one like relatively close idea.
Exactly.
And there's so many things you don't know.
There are many things. But just to finish before you go into it, Adam, I think the three fatal flaws which humans do when they think about these things. Number one is they think in our own timescales instead of geological time periods. So the only reason I know this is because I did geophysics at UCL. So obviously I started thinking in millions of years and realizing actually these climate systems have been around for billions of years, I think. So instead of seeing 70 years and seeing a change in that 70 years, we need to judge it over much longer than that. Number two, what was number two in humans' flawed thinking?
What, from yesterday?
No, the other time, yeah. Can't remember. Anyway.
You said timescales and then, linear.
No, that was number three. That was the most important point.
Right.
Oh, yeah. It's that we think that what is happening now has always been like that and will always happen in the future. So we think that if we keep on pumping out carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas supposedly and traps heat in the atmosphere, then the heat of the earth is just going to keep on rising like that and just never go, and just it'll keep on rising until we're as hot as the sun and everyone's burnt to a crisp. That's what a lot of people think is going to happen. And then number three is that humans, I understand that again, we think in very linear ways. So if I do this, there'll be a direct action, but they don't think in non-linear ways, which is where Sam comes in. So they don't understand that loads of these big systems, they operate using non-linear physics principles, don't they? And again.
Yeah.
I've got two questions then. One is, Sam, how does non-linearity relate to this? Let's talk about the cloud situation. So can you explain how non-linearity relates to that? And the second question is for you, Kit, after Sam. How does someone who's trying to improve their skin microbiome take what you've just mentioned about if you introduce just one element, for example, that can then completely, set off skew the whole ecosystem on your skin. But I'll go to Sam first.
I've forgotten the second question, but the first question was about non-linear physics, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, really simply, say if linear physics or linear thinking is just, if I do this, I'll get this. Like if I put $10 in my bank account, then my bank account is going to increase by $10. So that's linear thinking. But if you put $10 in your bank account and then the next day you had $1 million, or the next day you had minus 2,000, that's non-linear thinking. You can't predict it. So in systems with so many different parts, if they've got ecosystems like the world, it's just got trillions of different parts all working together. So you can't look at one and go, if we put cloud particles here and make it a bit colder, then there's only one event that's going to happen. There's so many ways it could happen, we can't predict it. So you can never predict it. You can't predict non-linear thinking, anything in non-linear, but you can predict, if you understand the system, you can sort of see patterns when you zoom out.
Can you do anything, or do we just sit back and just observe in if you're just applying non-linearity?
That's a good question.
Good question.
Well, especially with like the climate and COVID and everything, that's why they got all the COVID models really wrong, because they had to make loads of assumptions, linear assumptions about how it spread and whatever. So all the COVID models were wrong. So the same with the climate too. When they make models, a model means because you can't predict it. So if we could predict it, like I could make a computer program about like decay, quantum decay, and it would just get it exactly right. But we can't predict anything in non-linear physics. So that's why they have to make models that are just estimate it and use that kind of linear
but you're
thinking.
saying that there's certain patterns which you can predict or something.
Well, yeah.
Like
so if you notice, like the fern we talked about the other day, you can see the fern and it looks cool. It looks very ordered. But actually, when you zoom in on that order, it's all completely higgledy-piggledy. It's all random. You can't predict what shape you're going to get. So that's like the world. So if you put cloud particles in, then you don't know what's going to happen in the slightest. And to be able to say that we do know is one, wrong, but it's also very arrogant, as in we can play God, and then it can suddenly we suddenly know exactly what's going to happen, whereas we can't. It's just wrong.
Is the skin microbiome non-linear?
Oh yeah, hugely. Yeah. It's got huge, many different things in. There's like trillions of different microbes all working together, all doing different things. So we have no clue what's going to happen. So the only thing you can look at is the whole system. So you zoom out, like the fern, you zoom out, and then you can understand more of the order. But you never can predict certain events or focus on certain microbes doing this, or if we do this, this is definitely going to happen. So the skin's the same. So for skin problems, you have to zoom out and look at when the skin's healthy, what is it? Well, it's biodiverse, and that